So I recently read on Emma Newman's blog that she would love to write more books in the Planetfall universe, which is great because I would love to read more books in the Planetfall universe. However, she does not have the current contractual offer available to write more books in the Planetfall universe. And I think we on BookTube, and especially sci-fi fans, should help to change that. And we need to talk about these books more because they are groundbreaking. Welcome back to StoryTube. What is the story? Well, I'll tell you what the story is. The story is you need to read Planetfall by Emma Newman, and you need to also read After Atlas by Emma Newman, and you also should read Before Mars by Emma Newman, and you should read Atlas Alone by Emma Newman. Why, I hear you ask? Well, watch this fucking video and find out. I wanted to make a video about Emma Newman's Planetfall series because I think in the modern era of science fiction being one of my favorite genres, probably the genre I grew up reading most of, it might be my favorite work of modern science fiction, at least my favorite series that's come out in the last 20 years or so that you find on sci-fi bookshelves. But I don't see it talked about online quite as much in the sphere or the realm of people talking about Martha Wells, Murderbot, Becky Chambers, Adrian Tchaikovsky, The Expanse. These kinds of big household names at the moment in science fiction. I don't see Emma Newman's name up there. At least in the online circles that I'm frequenting, that I am going around in. But I want to spread the gospel about the Planetfall series, because this is really, really, really great. I read the first book, Planetfall, a number of years ago, and I thought it was viscerally immersive. And I don't know many books that garner such a visceral reaction from me emotionally as this book did. She taps into aspects of psychology with these characters in her books that just really stabs at something subconscious. And I kind of think that these books are semi-masterpieces in a way of where science fiction is going. There's a lot of stuff in these books that have existed in science fiction for decades, almost a century. But I think Emma Newman is one of the best I've read at bringing it into the modern era and now including aspects of 21st century life, especially in the Western world, of where things are going, and also talking about hugely important elements of mental health. And she writes what I believe to be character-driven science fiction. It's not necessarily plot-driven science fiction, nor is it really ideas-driven science fiction. It is character psychology-driven science fiction, with all of that other stuff in there as well. And I feel like her Planetfall books could become modern classics just with the subject matter that they deal with and how they deal with it. And Emma Newman has a really subtle touch when it comes to her writing. These books could sound, and I'll go through them individually in a second, but they could sound like, pretentious, literary, hard to penetrate, difficult to grasp, complex. But at their core, they're also just really, really compelling and fun to read. And I think her style is subtle enough, and she accomplishes what she accomplishes with a real subtle touch that you don't necessarily have to notice the writing. And it makes them ridiculously easy to read. So anyway, I think I would put her up there among the sci-fi greats that I've read. She's tapping into topics that are in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment, that people are talking about, people are worrying about. And all of these circumstances and variables that we're all living with at the moment in terms of AI, capitalism, technology, how technology is becoming one with consciousness. She even goes into stuff like gaming and virtual reality and what is reality and consciousness, all through the lens of a real focus on mental health. And I know that, for example, I don't want to compare it to this series, the Murderbot books, which I loved for like 2 books, and then it just got repetitive. I find that with Emma Newman's formula, if she has one, she tackles an element of mental health in each book, but each book has a different style. I found the Murderbot books, for example, which also delve into mental health, a bit samey. And once I read 1, I kind of got the picture, and then I read 2 and I was like, this is okay, and I kind of just stopped because I got it. This series, I just want more. I want more and more and more of this. I said I didn't really want to compare it to Murderbot, and then I went and I compared it to Murderbot. But I'm just going to say it. I think Emma Newman is better. Not that they really have anything to do with each other, but in terms of what they're talking about, that series has found its spot on the internet, and it's a sort of a booktube darling. And here I am reading the rest of this series this year thinking, why isn't this a booktube darling? Let's get it there. Let's spread the word of Planetfall. Anyway, enough of me being a Planetfall prophet. What is the series about? Is this a series that is continuous, that you need to read in order? Are they a bunch of standalones? What's the deal? What's the story? Here we go. So Planetfall is book 1, and this concerns a woman who suffers from severe anxiety, who goes on a spaceship pilgrimage to a distant planet, following a woman known as the Pathfinder, who claims to have the answers to life and to know about God. And this group of cultists, I guess, follow this woman on a spaceship called the Atlas to a distant planet in search of these answers. Now, our main protagonist here, her name is Renata. Her faith in this cause, in this pilgrimage, is pretty questionable at best, and she is kind of just going because she's in love with the Pathfinder. And she is struggling with intense anxiety disorder. Now, I don't want to reveal too much about it. It's not a very plot-driven book. It's not a very plot-driven series, although they are kind of written like literary thrillers, and they're very, very compelling. There is an element of mystery in each book. However, we're really focusing on that character psychology. She pairs that with ideas about future late-stage capitalism, AI, and how it's both good and bad. You got 3D printing in here, food printing, resource printing, that kind of thing. And the main character here is a woman that works with 3D printing. And there's a little bit in here about how she attaches so much emotional value to physical objects. She struggles kind of to socialize a little bit. I think there's a bit of autistic coding in here. And if I'm not mistaken, Emma Newman was originally diagnosed herself with a sort of generalized anxiety disorder. And after writing these books in the Planetfall series, got a diagnosis for autism in her mid-40s, early mid-40s. You can see the autism traits and the struggles with anxiety written throughout the 4 books, and maybe these books helped her realize that she got a misdiagnosis when she was in her late teens, early 20s, whenever she got that original diagnosis. And there's a huge element of that in this first book especially, but as the books progress as well, there's different elements and aspects and sort of symptoms that she likes to write about, different mental health issues that she likes to write about, that were clearly a big source of help and almost catharsis for her before getting her own autism diagnosis, which I just find very fascinating. It's an aside. It has nothing to do with the books really, but I just think that's a really fascinating thing because she garners such an visceral emotional reaction from me because of the psychological realism that's in her books, especially this one. When I read it a few years ago, there's a scene, I can't really talk about it without spoiling, but there is a scene where it feels like the community on this planet that they're in, when they land, they set up this like base, this little sort of commune They invade the main character's privacy on a level that made me so angry, because you understand how her brain works and you gain a real empathy for the character. Everything else that's going on around that becomes superficial. It becomes superfluous. It's not as important as what's happening to the character. But it's still a very cool mystery at the heart of book one. There was a crash when they initially landed on this planet, and we need to find out what happened to a couple of these people. There's a big, large structure, a sort of an alien structure that they've landed beside, and we don't really know what it is. And there's scenes where we go and investigate it. We go in and see what's going on in there. Is there alien life? What's the deal? And what does it mean? And the ending of this book, while some people might find it a little ambiguous and unsatisfying, I thought it gave me a lot to think about. And it reminded me slightly of Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. But this one, it really is one of my favourite sci-fi books of the last 20 years or so. I would absolutely put it up there with the most popular science fiction books of the last number of years. And I just think it's worth talking about. The characters in it, the relationships, even the ideas about future technology and religion and what it will mean for faith are just all very interesting. If you try this first book and you find the ending a little unsatisfying, a little too ambiguous for your liking, you might like book 2, which is After Atlas. So, as the title implies, this is after the Atlas ship from Planetfall zooms off to that distant planet, and what happens to the people left on Earth, and what is going on Earth right now. And this book I would describe as a cyberpunk murder mystery, cyberpunk noir, with a heavy focus on AI and future late-stage capitalism. Our main character here is a detective. Coincidentally, his name is Carlos, like my own. So that's double points there for Emma Newman. But the intriguing thing about the character in this is that he's basically a slave. And she goes into this idea of indentured servitude and like contract, building up points on a contract and sort of buying yourself out of debt with a corporation in terms of employment. And that's how a lot of people in this world or on future Earth in this society are actually employed. And they basically have years on a contract or years of servitude to a GovCorp or a corporation. Corporations in this world are now basically countries. They are more powerful than countries, which again, we're not too far away from that. And it's not a new idea in science fiction either, but the way she plays with it and the way she brings in modern ideas about mental health and conversation about mental health make it really interesting. And also, the way she uses AI here, people have chips in their brains. Again, it's very cyberpunk, but she doesn't treat AI like it's the most evil thing in the world. Like we all talk about, oh, AI is just evil. It's how we use it. It's what we do with it. What is the purpose of AI? And in some cases, it's life-saving. And in other cases, it's the people using it and how they use it that is the evil aspect, I guess. And in this book, our main detective needs to investigate on behalf of this GovCorp the death of the leader of a anti-technology cult called a Circle. And our main detective was in this cult when he was a kid, and he's got repressed memories and repressed trauma from his time in that cult, which also just so happened to include his daddy. So I'm not going to say any more about this one. This, if you found Planetfall a little unsatisfying with the ending, I guarantee you're going to feel differently about After Atlas. It's got an absolutely ripping plot, and the ending is a killer. So I really recommend that you read at least the first two, and if you're sold by the end of the second book, this series is for you. Now, you can read the first two. I'll take a little pause here and talk about those first two books, Planetfall and After Atlas. You can read those first two in any order you want. But I will say that before reading the third and fourth book, you must read After Atlas, because something happens that is world changing at the end of this book, and the ramifications and repercussions of that event echo through the mystery and the plot of books 3 and 4. So definitely read After Atlas before the third and fourth, but the first two you can read in any order you wish. The third book then is seemingly unrelated from the other two, and is about a artist slash geologist woman who is sent to Mars by a rich billionaire dude who has bought the land rights to Mars. Sounds like someone we might know. And she is basically contracted to go out there and paint landscapes of Mars, bring them back to Earth so that he can make loads of money off that stuff. However, weird shit is happening on this station on Mars. She arrives there, meets her crew. Some of them are weirdly hostile to her, and some she has a strange kind of connection to that she can't recall. And the AI of the station seems to be lying to them about the state of affairs outside their base. They're kept within the confines of their base when they go outside. They're kept kind of within a radius so that they don't travel past it. And of course our main character is very interested about what's going on outside that radius. Why is the AI lying? Is something out there? But the main focus of this book really is actually all about paranoia, reality, and postpartum depression. So this character is quite a difficult character to follow in terms of latching onto them. But Emma Newman writes these characters so well that you can't help but empathize with them, and you just care about what is going to happen to them. And this is also a very interesting character to find in fiction in general, in any kind of fiction, not just genre fiction, of this woman who has a daughter but clearly has hit this pit of depression, and motherhood doesn't come naturally to her, and she loves her daughter, but she doesn't know if she loves being a mother. And this creates a very, very complicated emotional situation for her, because she feels like she has escaped her married life, her life of motherhood, to go off to Mars, to follow kind of her dream of studying Mars and finding potential life out there. And she feels happier than she's ever done going to Mars, but she also feels intense guilt about that. And this drives the entire book, basically. But also all of that cool intrigue and mystery that's going on around the base and the circumstances that she finds herself there. And also all of the anger at this selfish, capitalistic exploitation of exploration and wonder. But at the center of it, it is that kind of inner turmoil in herself about postpartum depression and her ideas about being a mother. And it's just very, very, very well written. Again, like I said, the writing is very subtle, so you don't necessarily realize that she is spitting absolute fire at you page after page, because the writing is very smooth and it's so easy to read, and she just kind of hooks you in. And by the end of each book, you're kind of left with, whoa, that was an emotional journey. And you feel a real weight in your chest when you close the final page of each book. And that is just, it's a skill to not realize that you're on that journey while you're on that journey. It's like forgetting that you're reading a book. I think the best writers make me forget that I'm reading a book, because quite often I have my sort of, my analytical, critical brain, and I judge a book, and I might really love a book, and I'll say, I'll give that 5 stars, blah, blah, blah. But I still know that I'm reading a book. I'm not entirely whisked away. I'm there appreciating the writing. I was like, that's very nicely put. And I'm just very aware of that. Emma Newman whisks me away on a story and whisks me into the heads of these characters, but does it very subtly, and I forget that I'm reading a book. And I just find that skill, I don't know how she does it, but that skill is impressive. And it's not like all of these books are really heady, complex, philosophical novels that, in theory, you might say, oh, that's a groundbreaking book. It's very highly intellectual, a bit abstract. These are very easy to read and deceptively profound. So I actually think this is my favorite of the four. Before Mars is my favorite of the four because it has a slightly more satisfying ending than the first book, and it builds off what's happening in the world with the first two books. I think that's where the series really, really peaks here. However, we've got the fallout of book 2 in book 4 here, and this one is Atlas Alone. This one is a direct sequel to After Atlas, so book 2. You just can't read this book without reading book 2. You could probably skip book 3 after book 2 and read this, but I think the important thing, if you wanted to read this series in the order of 2, 3, 4, 1, or 1, 2, 4, 3, you probably could. But if you're going to read these books anyway, just read them how they were published. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. This is the last one. I can't say a huge amount about this book because the plot of it and the synopsis of it is directly related to the ending of the second book, which is a massive spoiler. But I'll just say that this one is all about gaming. So any gamers out there, any VR fans, any just gamers in general, this follows a character who is an intense gamer, and she is actually paid to game. But like the character in book 2, who is her best friend, this character here, she is an indentured slave, and she works for gaming companies. And she's on a spaceship with a load of people in this book, and she wants to find out what happened at the end of book 2, who was involved, and are they on the same ship as her. And she does this when she receives a mysterious box that opens up, and it's a VR world, and they call them immersives. So it's an immersive game, and they're called immersives in this world. And she steps into this immersive, and she plays her way through levels like a gamer, figuring out game mechanics and finding out who was involved in this event that happened at the end of book 2, and what can I do about it, and can I get revenge. And this book is very angry. There's a lot of hidden anger in this one, kind of similar to the second one, a bit of hidden trauma. I wouldn't characterize the woman in this book as depressed, but she is dealing with rage. And rage at a system, rage at capitalism, rage at greed, rage at lack of empathy. And she's coming at it from that perspective of being a slave to that system and being the bottom of the barrel. She's kicked down into the dirt, and she's a cog in a machine. And this book is all about that kind of mystery and anger and revenge at that system. And can she get back at those who are the most privileged and suppress the working class and the slave class in this world as well? So I can't say too much else about it, but if you're in any way into like cyberpunk, if you love gaming, if you like ideas of fighting back against ultra capitalism that's too far gone, if you're angry at the system that you're in, she taps into this. And there's a lot of really great passages in this book about that and tapping into that anger that I think a lot of us are feeling nowadays. But also she is considering what things could be like in 200, 300, 400 years time. It's a little bit like that near future expanse idea, but she goes much further into AI, future government corporations, really advanced capitalism, all these superpower GovCorps having access to nuclear weapons and what that means for tensions on Earth. All of that stuff is in this series, but it's always anchored with a character's internal emotional struggle with whatever mental health issue they're going through at the time or whatever mental illness they have. And it's just these characters kind of battling through that and finding a reason to continue on in this world that is beating them down. And I genuinely think that these books are really groundbreaking for what science fiction is, for where it is now, and for where we are as a society now, because that is the purpose of science fiction, is to comment on where we are right now by speculating about where we might be. I think Planetfall and the 4 books, all 4 of them, do this to absolute perfection, and they really tap into where we are now consciously as a society, and I can't recommend them highly enough. If you want me to rank the books, I would say Before Mars, Book 3, Planetfall, Book 2, After Atlas, Book 3, and the bottom one is Book 4, Atlas Alone. But honestly, that could change. Maybe it could be Before Mars, Atlas Alone, After Atlas, Planetfall. I don't really know. I just know that I think my favourite one is the 3rd one. Anyway, if I have made you in any way interested in these books, please read them and please come back and let me know. Come back to this video and leave a comment and let me know how you get on with Planetfall. If you found the ending a little unsatisfying, move on to the next one. I guarantee you'll like it. If you have read Planetfall, or if you've read a couple of the books, comment down below and let me know what you thought. And if you like this video, give it a like. Spread the word about Planetfall on Sci-Fi BookTube. And any fantasy readers or readers of general fiction or readers of literary fiction, read Planetfall as well, because it might tap into some things that you guys like. I genuinely think that Planetfall is written in a very accessible way, to where if you've never even read science fiction, there's enough elements of thriller in there, psychological thriller, that will appease people who just want a real rip-roaring page-turner. And it's also psychologically rich to the point where I'd recommend it to any reader of literary fiction. So I think these books have wide range and mass appeal, and I would love for more people to pick them up, because then Emma Newman can write more of them. So please like this video, share it around, spread the Emma Newman gospel, and I'll see you guys later. Subscribe as well, do that. See you later, bye.